All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Colette Baron-Reid, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Inside the Wooniverse, a podcast brought to you from the corner of Fringe and Maine. Angels. We are going to be talking about angels today. We've heard about them both in the mainstream and on the fringe. And right here in the Wooniverse is where we are going to talk about them today. You know, they appear in virtually every type of ancient religious or spiritual text. They're in some of the most sacred and priceless works of art. They're also right here on my top. And there's an entire genre onto themselves in Hollywood films. So if you've ever wondered just what is an angel and how does the angelic realm work, and how can we communicate with these beings or feel their presence? Well, today we are speaking with one of my most favorite people on the planet, angel expert, best-selling author, spectacular teacher, yogi. He's an oracle creator and the most awesome recording artist. I listen to his music literally every day. His name is Kyle Gray. But wait, before we say hello to Kyle, well, you can wave, Kyle, a little bit more about Kyle. He is an international speaker and best-selling author of 7 books, including the much-loved and my favorite Angel Prayers and, whoa, Raise Your Vibration. So cool. And the co-creator of 5 Oracle card decks, including his latest Gateway of Light Activation Oracle. Now, he has written, performed, and recorded my most favorite meditation track that is always on repeat on my iPad and in my headphones. I listen to it at least twice a day, and it's called Breathe, My Dear. Welcome, Kyle, you rock star, you.
Thank you so much. Has to be the best introduction I've ever had in my entire career. Thank you so much.
Well, now we've set the bar as we go forward. Oh my gosh. Listen, let's just jump into this because you have such a phenomenal story that I really want everybody to know. I mean, today we know you as all of those things that I said. You're super successful. You are so loved. I mean, I've worked with you too on stage. You are outrageously phenomenal. But, I wonder if people really know your story. So as you were growing up, I want to know about your spiritual awakening because you just didn't get born and all of a sudden became an angel expert. You had to go through something to get to where you are. So let's talk a little bit about that, especially when you were young.
Yeah, sure. I guess my story started very young. I had, I grew up in a normal household in the west coast of Scotland. And when I was around 3.5 years old, I got a really bad flu.
Oh.
And the bad flu, really wiped me out. And then one morning I woke up and I couldn't move my legs. And it turned out I had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is an autoimmune response. It's a virus that attacks the nervous system, and in order to protect itself, it switches off.
Wow.
And so I spent the next 11 months or so kind of in paralysis and having to rehab out of this virus. And it was during that time I started to develop sensitivity. It started with being able to feel what was going on in the next room because I couldn't run like I normally would. And I would always, try and intuit what was happening next door. I developed really clear hearing where I can really hear well, like beyond the walls. And even smell was another skill that I really developed, to a point that became a bit of a curse growing up because I can almost see smells before I smell them, you know.
Whoa, that's cool.
So that's how it all started. And at the same time, my grandmother also was in a wheelchair. So we're both in wheelchairs, and she moved in with us in her family home because my mother became a nurse to both of us. And my grandmother's health sadly deteriorated and my health improved. It was almost like she took away all my pain.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one night she'd been moved to hospital, and a neighbor called Margaret was looking out for me, and she was like an adopted auntie,
Yeah.
And she was like a devout Catholic, and she used to take me to chapel and light candles with her. So there was a kind of installation of spirituality from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember falling asleep with the light on, waking with the light off, just like you would when you're little. And my grandmother was at the bottom of my bed, and she flipped me on my belly and she tickled my back. And I remember just feeling so loved and so cherished. And I remember the week so clearly because it was the same week I was starting school. And my parents also like split up the same week. And the next morning when I was looking for my grandmother, and by this point I was walking again, I couldn't find her, and it turns out she'd actually passed away.
So wait, stop there, right there. So when you described your grandmother tickling your belly and turning you over, she was in spirit.
I didn't know she died
Oh,
yet, but
wow. I love this. Yeah.
yeah. So I then said to my mother, and she can remember this, I was like, "Where's Nana?" And she's like, she couldn't answer me because it was obviously her mother. And I was like, "Where's Nana?" And my mom's like, "Oh, she's not coming home. She's not coming home." And I was like, "But she came home last night. She was in my room." And so there was like a lot of kind of questions, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, "Oh, he must have been dreaming." And then later on that day, it was revealed to me that she'd actually passed away. And the way my parents told me was, "Your Nana's away to heaven, you know." And from that moment on, I've questioned life as it was. I've always been like, if we go to heaven, why did I see her? And so like that was
Mm-hmm.
like an age-old question that haunted me my entire adolescence. It was just all the way through being a child and into teenage years. I was like on this search to figure out what was beyond.
Right. You had a lot of anxiety too, right? When you were a teenager. And how did you manage that? And how did you protect yourself in your neighborhood? I know that you had a lot
Yeah,
of.
I was kind of overly sensitive. I've always been a mummy's boy, and yeah, I'm still a mummy's boy, and I've always kind of been in this kind of wrapped up relationship with my mother, and it was in some way problematic for me in many ways because I always relied on the strength of the mother growing up, and it made me it made me cower in school and run away from things and be really scared without her. And it bothered me, and I always felt a bit of an outsider in school and growing up, and I was always that overly sensitive kid. But it helped. Things kind of started to change. I got to my teenage years, and I had many psychic experiences growing
Mm-hmm.
up that had led, but I'd never really put them together.
Right.
And Buffy the Vampire Slayer came on TV. I must have been about 11 or 12. I became like transfixed on this TV show to the point I started dressing like the characters, and
I love it.
you know,
Yeah.
I felt like I wanted to be one of them, and that's what really sent me down the road of magic and
Mm-hmm.
the mysterious and all that kind of stuff, and that introduced me to crystals, and that's one of the big things that became a part of my life before angels became prominent was crystals. So I'd also have crystals in my pockets, and it was like I believed that they would protect me, and that was something that really got me through an anxious time. I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for how difficult
Mm-hmm.
high school is.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that. So, because I know you actually train, I think you have a training program now in crystal healing. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's
So,
more successful than the angel program, which is
yeah. I mean, we're going to
insane.
talk about all of it because I do think, I am also a crystal maniac,
Yeah.
and have them everywhere.
Mm,
And I even have an oracle card deck, Crystal Spirits. But for
there you
you, I
go.
want to know, for you, why were they so powerful for you? Is because did they speak to you? Did they like how do you, because you obviously tuned in because you're hypersensitive and I believe they're
Mhm.
alive. So what do you believe?
Yeah. I believe crystals have this kind of oversoul.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's really what you were tuning into when you created
Yeah.
Crystal Spirits Oracle, like this essence, like a deva inside of it. And yes, it all kind of started before Buffy though. A friend in school went to Africa and she brought me back a tiger's eye. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old. And that thing stayed in my pocket every day of school, like all the way through school, all the way up until high school. And I just learned that it was a protective stone. And I just instantly believed, there was no questioning that this had a property to it.
Yes.
You know, and so that was like my initial, and then because both my grandparents passed away when I was super young, my cousin's Nana let me call her Nana, and she bought me one of those guardian angel pendants, pins for my blazer, and it had a crystal in it. It was amethyst, and that was my birthstone. So it was like little increments of information. And then when I was 15 years old, my mother was like, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I was like, "I want to study crystal healing."
Really? That's funny.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
can you imagine? Other kids would be like, "I want a new car," and you're like, "I'd like to study crystal healing, please."
And my mother actually bought me like a diploma training in crystal therapy for
Wow.
my Christmas that year.
That is so cool. So how did the angels walk into it? Because I mean, I think what's I love about you is that you are so multifaceted, and people tend to put people in one box, right? So,
Right.
and but you know, you have had also such a profound relationship to the angels, and I think
Mhm.
you even went to divinity school for a bit, right?
No,
No, you didn't.
I was about to
You were
go.
about to
You're
go.
right.
Okay,
Yeah, that was maybe going to happen, and then there was another avenue.
right. So when was your first and most amazing? Maybe it was a combined experience, crystals and angels. Well, when did all of a sudden
They were all happening around the same
yeah.
time. So I had already had an angel experience when I wanted to go and study crystal therapy. What had happened is the year before, I was 14 years old, and my dad had a girlfriend at the time who was a Reiki master.
Uh-huh.
And she knew I was super interested in crystals. And she said, "What about angels?" And I had grown up in a loosely Christian household, but my mum's sister married the pastor.
Okay.
And so I went to like newborn Christian Sunday school from the age of 4 till 15. And I had been turned off by Christianity for many reasons, but one day one of my cousins who was a Sunday school leader said to me, "You know, Kyle, it's God or Buffy, and
It's
you have
God
to
or
do
Buffy? Come on. That's hilarious.
it." I was genuinely obsessed. I mean, I have a poster on the wall right now in my lounge of my home, like Buffy and the Lost Boys. Like I was so into
Oh my
that.
God. I love
And
Buffy and the Lost Boys.
yeah, and Stevie Nicks, like that's
Oh
my
yeah.
so yeah, and then she said, "No, angels are beyond religion,
Mm-hmm.
and we can communicate with them. You have your own guardian angel." And she was so sure about it. And she said, "Come on upstairs and I'll let you pick an angel card." And I was like, "What's an angel card?" She's like, "They are these cards that are based on positivity, and you can pick one and it brings you guidance." And I was like, "Whoa, that sounds so cool."
Uh-huh.
And I remember like going upstairs and she had the velvet bag with the velvet
Mm-hmm.
claw. You know, we've all got one.
Yeah, we have.
And, and my first card was the word synchronicity, and I'd never even heard of it before.
Mm.
And instantly I became transfixed on the idea of angels. I remember going to the library the next day or so and printing out all this information on angels and getting books on them. And for my birthday that year, she bought me angel cards. So I'm now 15 and I'm like really getting it. And I then discovered Hay House, like all at that time.
Uh-huh.
And I was like giving it all. And then that summer, I started to get really good at angel cards. But I would just say this card means this and this card means that.
Right.
There was like, I was a card reader. But this one day I went to a family friend's barbecue that my mum's friend was hosting. There was a gay couple there. I'd never met them before, and they were wanting an angel card reading. So I set up shop on a picnic bench in the yard, and I was doing readings for everyone. And this one particular reading for one of the guys, was so powerful, and it's what let me see angels were real. I had him, sit outside, and I had the angel cards. I've got a set here, and I was like, put your hands on top of the cards. I like to get my people to put their hands on the cards, like to just hold them, so hands on the cards. And I was like, just think about anything you would like to hear about or guidance. And in my head, I was doing what every psychic has done their whole entire life. Please let me be right. Please let me be accurate.
That's right. Please don't let me say something wrong.
Give me something that will make them know that I'm real, all that stuff. And the weirdest thing happened. I started to hear music in my mind, and it was Destiny's Child, the song Survivor. And I was like, can you hear what's going on? And they're like, no. I'm like, can you not hear that music? And they're like, no. And I was like, I can hear Destiny's Child Survivor, and I feel like it's for you. So this was all happening supernaturally. And I then said this prayer that changed the whole thing. I just said, if there's an angel here, and I was very particular about my words, I went, thank you for revealing your presence. And it was like time froze. I saw this pinpoint of light coming towards me. It makes my hair stand on edge every time. And all of a sudden there was this pillar of light standing behind the man. And it had it was like a pillar of light, and the presence kind of came out of it.
Right.
And it looked like the movie Cocoon, if you've ever seen that.
That's how I see them. Yeah. Like all made of light and filaments of light. Like this, like webs of light and filaments of light. Yeah. I totally understand this.
And they had these like really deep eyes, like as dark as the midnight sky, and then all I heard was, tell this man he is the survivor. Like that was so direct. And I went, there's an angel standing behind you right now, and it just told me to tell you that you're a survivor. And I said, and he's like, what do you mean I'm a survivor? And all these images just started playing in my head. You know this.
Yes, you receive it. It's a reception.
Right. So you're getting this like moving. I'm going really fast. I'm like, it feels like you've not wanted to be here. It feels like you don't feel you belong, and you've tried to leave, and you've been kept here. Like this is what's coming out. And he's like, whoa. And I've had enough. This is too much. This is too heavy. And I was like, whoa. And so in that instant when he said, I've had enough,
that was
it just all stopped. And then later on that evening, it was revealed to the person that had the barbecue what had happened. And they then called my mother. And it turns out this guy had tried to take his own life several times. And there was these really spooky interventions that stopped it from happening.
That's incredible.
So that was it. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I then said to my mom, the most weirdest sentence that any 15-year-old should say. I went, this is what I was put on the earth to do. I was so certain. Wow. And my mom was like, what do you mean? Like, she was like so freaked out.
I can imagine. I understand.
And then very quickly, when you live in a small town, people hear about these things. And so people then started contacting my mother. This was before social media, right?
Right. I get it.
Phoning her up, and they're like, is your son the boy who can see angels? I want to see him. I want to meet him.
The boy who can see angels. That's amazing. And so they came and lined up.
So then I I started going to this local spiritualist church to train in mediumship, but they didn't really do the angel thing.
Right.
And every time I was doing mediumship demonstrations or like learning the mediumship method, I always saw more than just dead people, and I was seeing angels. And the president of the company was like, no, we don't do angel stuff here. You have to do mediumship. So I ended up kind of backdooring readings for a while.
That's funny.
And she actually kicked me out for doing that.
For the lack of purity. Yes, I understand that. Yes. Okay, I want to ask you another question here, because this is fascinating. So I want to go back a couple of steps. When you said the prayer, do you think that praise in advance, the thank you in advance, is the key to unlocking the presence of the angels?
that was it. And that's like what's went on to become predominantly my work with the angels. And I think if I can leave behind something like as my legacy, it is the affirmative prayer.
The affirmative prayer.
That method of, instead of saying please, because when you're doing that, it's from a space of lack. Whereas I was so sure there was a presence there. And so the thank you for revealing it gave that energy permission to fully reveal. And I think there was another magic in it, and it was the willingness to be vulnerable and willingness to be seen. Because when I look back, it wasn't actually about me seeing the angel. I always speak about this. It felt to me it was about allowing myself to be seen by the angel.
Oh, interesting, because you are seen in all your entirety by an angel.
Right. And I was like, all the parts of ourselves that we're so afraid of showing to the world is often the psychic shields that stop us from having spiritual experiences. And so I was in some way willing to go to that naked space in order to let the angel through.
So there's so many really good things you just talked about. So the psychic shield, when you think about how we all try to protect ourselves, so we can't be seen, right? I mean, many of us, those many masks that we build is what it sounds to me that you're saying. So now you've allowed yourself to be seen by an angel. You became a scholar of angels, because that is one thing I do know about you. You know so much about the scholarly understanding of angels. You studied them. But what was your favorite one that you've connected with all these years? Because you're not 15 anymore. You've had 15 years or more.
Like my favorite ever angel I've ever...
Yeah, like the favorite angel experience.
That's a really great question. There was this... Gosh, there's so many experiences of actually having like physical presence. But I'll never forget when I was creating the Ancestors Oracle, I thought the deck was done. And I remember I was in bed, I was in my apartment in Glasgow at the time, and I heard the downstairs door like go. And this was like crazy o'clock in the morning. And I was like, whoa. And so, like all psychics, you have to go, is that a physical person or is it some sort of spiritual presence that's coming in? And I knew there was an angel coming, and they were doing it very physically. And then this angel appeared in my bedroom, and it was this like black woman angel. And she had like this like Inspector Gadget coat on, it was like, and she went like this, and there was all these like vials in it.
Wow.
And and I was like, whoa. And I was like, thank you for being here. That's the way I always speak to angels. I speak to them in a really respectful way. I'm like, thank you for bringing your presence to me. Like, I'm kind of, the spiritualist training has done something, like, and I said, what brings you here today? Like, that's the way I spoke to the angel. And the angel said, do not forget about me. I am the magic guardian, and then disappeared.
Whoa, that's even better than Buffy.
I was, she said, I am the magic guardian. And then like, I was like,
oh my
and
God.
then, so then, I then like meditated on it the next day. And the magic guardian is this angel that oversees the energy of magic, and she helps direct the will in order to create. And I was...
Okay, we got to dial this back 1 second now, because you're saying so many cool things. Okay, so okay, how does magic work? So people are all going to wonder, like, what was in the vials, like, or was it just you don't know? Okay, so
I don't know. Yeah, I tried to get the artist to recreate her
in your deck, right?
In the deck, right? Because I thought it was done. Right. And so it took us through this really uneven number. And so we're like, okay, I'm going to have to...
And that's the Ancestors Oracle, Angels and Ancestors?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great.
Yeah. So we created this kind of like black woman angel holding like this censer, but...
So wait though, because you talked about magic, like she's the guardian of magic. So I want you to define magic for everybody, because we know we're not talking about pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
No. For me, magic is that force of energy that is, um, you can direct it.
With will.
With will,
Hmm.
and it's a force of energy that essentially is neutral,
Hmm.
and so that's why I think a lot of people can use that power in not so great ways, and I
Yep.
think people can use it in great ways. But whatever way you do use it, it will always teach you a lesson. Like
Hmm.
that's your thing. And so the magic guardian seems to be like this presence or entity or angel that in some way ensures it's being distributed in a way that's going to bring a lesson.
So what's the greatest lesson that you've experienced working with the angels?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is that no physical thing can ever dial me into happiness,
Oh, yes.
And when I first started to work with the angels, I was receiving a lot of demonstrations of like really cool things happening, like this and that, and manifestations, and then somewhere along the way, like when I started praying to the angels and working with them, I'd ask for this and I'd ask for that, and then I was kind of feeling an emptiness with it, and I was like, angels, um, why is this happening? And I remember receiving this message, something along the lines of, you're trying to fill a space that can never be filled. It was just
Right.
something along those lines. And ever since that day, I've stopped asking for specific things. I don't have a manifestation goal or anything
Yeah.
like that. And I just surrender my day every day to the angels with the knowing that the best will unfold anyway. Like that's the way I do it. And everything I've ever wanted, need, and more has always been given to me.
I love that. I mean, but I think too, some of the issues with the quote unquote conversation about manifestation is thing
Mhm.
oriented. So I always
Right,
look at it as the essence of the experience that you want to have, that
right.
as opposed to the other thing. But I love that. Yeah. And then surrender the form. You have to just surrender the form. I have another question that I'm wondering if this ever happens to you. Do you ever have a difficult day where you can't connect?
Do you know it's so funny? So I was having a really hard day yesterday, and yeah, I can still feel the field. Which I
Right.
call it the field now. When I was younger, angels used to appear like very singular,
Right.
and now when I tune into angels, it's more like a consciousness.
I connect to
Um,
them as a collective.
right, a collective.
Yeah, a
It's a
collective.
collective. It's like it's consciousness. There are many fragments or figments
Mhm.
of intelligence within that field.
Uh-huh.
And so when I go into the field, it's like I can feel my ancestors, I can feel parts of myself from previous lifetimes, and I can feel the angels. And I go there every day, and I have a really tight meditation practice. I'm a 40 minutes a day kind of
Me
person,
too.
like
Yeah.
really tight, and I can feel it every time. And it doesn't matter what's going on, I can still get there. So I find that really, really awesome.
So you've never
You
had a
know,
day where you had a hard time connecting?
when I was younger, I used to find a difficulty, and it was because I was basing my connection on the capacity to give evidence to people.
Right.
Like give them a message, give them a reading. Some days I've tried to do readings and it's just not been there, but
Yeah.
it doesn't feel
That you're
like I can.
disconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
But as before, it did feel like that because of that.
There is a subtle difference, is what I'm hearing you say. So let me ask you this then. So let's go back to what I believe is 1000% why you are always connected, which is your tight meditation
It's
practice.
100% that. Yeah.
So tell me about
It's
that.
Yeah, it's evolved over the years. I used to just, meditate. I've always had a silent meditation. And then I started doing the Kundalini meditation. I'm on day 557 of unbroken practice. But for me, whenever I meditate, I always just have a moment where there's just silence, just let whatever needs to be. And I'm not trying to do anything, and I'm not trying to experience anything. It's just I'm there. And sometimes I'll feel like there's a presence there. Sometimes it's just, I'll just cry my eyes out and be in my own feelings. But the thing that's shifted over the years is the recognition that unless I'm willing to listen to me, I'll never be able to hear my angels. And so when I'm meditating, I'm giving my own self and my own mind permission to just be what it needs to be and do what it needs to do. And through being able to recognize that, listen to it, feel it, I then crack open the connection to the divine.
Do you find too that you must experience the monkey mind every once in a while? Like I have a chatterbox that goes and I have to just let it go. Like it
And
just
that's
has to
why-
go babbling away until it doesn't.
Yeah. That's why the mantra meditation has become like a thing for me, because when you're fixated on this, saying the same word over and over and over again, for some reason the monkey mind just like switches off. And it's weird because I start to go places when I'm doing mantra meditation. I'm still doing the mantra, but I'm like on a journey.
What mantras are your favorite ones?
So I do the one Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. And I'm doing that for like 11 minutes constantly.
And what does that mean?
It means, wow, great teacher within, remover of darkness. Yeah, so gu, it means darkness, and ru means light, so the remover of darkness. Wahi, and wa is like, wow. Wow.
Oh, I love that. That's your favorite one that you do for 11 minutes?
Yeah, it's my favorite one. And then I've got a number of different ones I'll tune into after that. And I also, I've been doing this new thing recently. I chant Elohim.
Oh, I love Elohim. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna record it.
Oh, I hope so.
Been chanting, and I like close my eyes and I roll my eyes up and in, and I'm like looking at the third eye, and I'm constantly chanting Elohim. And I've been feeling like that's been really powerful for angelic energy.
So let me ask you, everybody's been having a really tough time lately. I mean, let's be honest, right? And
I'm just coming out of my Saturn return.
Right, exactly, right? So I like to call that critical mind the little inner critic, the goblin, right? That it's homeless and we've somehow disowned it, the disowned personality, et cetera. Do you have anything that comes up and that you can share how you manage when you have those difficult thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that rise up? And then how do you cope with that? How do you manage it?
Oh, yeah, I speak directly to it. I have like a full-on conversation with you want to call it ego or the negative mind. I think it's a really useful thing. And I actually see my ego as, Will and Grace.
Yeah.
Do you know Karen from Will and Grace?
Yeah.
She's kind of like squeaky and kind of, that's mine. And, I feel like my ego has like Prada shoes on and like is a high end kind of.
That's hilarious. Prada.
So yeah, I always just speak directly to it, and I'm like, thank you so much for sharing what you're sharing, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to remember how much I care about whatever you're speaking about. So whenever the ego gets loud, it always fixates on something that is important,
or it thinks it's important.
Yeah. Specifically like fears or concerns, it usually is because I really care about the situation or where it's going. And so I always just say thanks for sharing and thanks for your opinion, because I think the moment you start to fight with your ego is the moment you create a war in your own energy field. Yep. And that is not the space that is magnetic to the angelic. And so I'm always thinking, how can I be softer? How can I be more easy? How can I be less
resistance? Like less resistant, you mean? Like, I love that you did the dialogue. I do that too. So I remember the first time that I had my experience with, I decided I'd call up my ego, see what I thought it was going to be, this gorgeous being or whatever. And it was Mr. Potato Head.
Really?
Mr. Potato Head with a sign around its neck that said fat.
Really?
I didn't have to have
Yeah,
Prada shoes.
they like to call it fat, doesn't it?
Yeah, right? So it was like, oh, that was a shock. I totally expected something else. But that whole concept of however it shows up for us, to be able to talk to it. And you're right, isn't it about love? It's about more love for ourselves. Therefore, we can give more to others. So you have this amazing program. Kind of, you put all of your skills, if you will, into helping people to raise their vibration, right? Because isn't this true that if we're in those difficult spots, that resistant spots, or, those kind of internal dialogue that's critical or challenging, our vibe is lower, right? I mean, if we're in there. So let's talk about what do you think people really need these days and what's the resistance to raising their vibes?
Yeah, I think even just the fact that we speak about vibes in such easy conversation these days, and I'm friends with a lot of people from high school still, and I'm friends with a lot of like sneakerheads, and they're not necessarily interested in anything that I do or even kind of have a clue what I'm up to. And yet they all use the word vibe.
Right.
Oh, it's a weird vibe. And I'm like, whoa, it's really caught on. Like,
yeah,
human beings are really aware that their vibe, their vibration,
their energy, it's energy. Yeah,
it can change. And I think what's really cool is, if you look at it this way, all of us have walked into a space one day and someone's having, a dog of a day, a bitch of a day, and everyone knows about it. But we also know what it's like to walk into a room when everyone's having a great time, and the infectiousness of it. And the funniest part is we've all been both of those people. Yeah. And that in itself is a clear indication that we know what it's like to be influenced by the presence of someone else, but we also know what it's like to influence our presence on someone else.
So right there, when you say that we know what it feels to be influenced, and so what are your thoughts on the collective influence right now, and what can we do about it so that we move from the conditioning that the collective is throwing on us, and how do we get more into that influential space? In a way, it's almost like getting into the magic of it.
Right. So I've been really focused on that in the last while, having direct conversation with the angelic, and I'm saying, angels, but that was my first thing. I was like, angels, the world's kind of in a funny space. Like, what am I supposed to do about it? And the angels were really clear. They were like, face your own darkness. And I was like, whoa, okay. And the angels then said, when you face your own darkness, you remove darkness from the world. And I was like, whoa. So they were really clear that if we're harboring our own darkness, whatever parts of ourselves that we've not faced, that's our energetic contribution to the planet.
So it's that shadow work, would you say? Shadow work, which I think is very important.
Shadow work, and also like anything it's in the depths of our being, like the parts of ourself that we've not expressed, the emotions that we've not felt, anything that's just the gifts that we've not allowed to be in the light, all that stuff. And the shadow, as you know, is also the parts of ourselves that we're unwilling to claim as our own story.
Sure.
So when we actually do that stuff, we're removing darkness from the world. And so it's through our own process that we can actually contribute a greater light. And the reason the angels have been so fixated on that in the messages I've heard is it's because when we feel more safe, the earth feels more safe. There's a synergetic relationship there. And I think that, as you know, hurt people. And
hurt people. Yeah. And there's a lot of projection too, because when you have no space, or when you're unwilling to face your shadow and it gets triggered, it's really an invitation to look. It's not even there to hurt you. It's like, hey, go take a look inside. Remember, it's like, do that work, look in your own darkness and then alleviate it. So let me ask you, how can we bring more love to the world, do you think?
I think it's about being willing to see other people's radiance.
Oh,
I call it creating the angelic worldview, like being able to see the world through the eyes of the angels, because it does not matter who you are or what you've done, the angels will always find your light. And when I'm seeing people who are even maybe difficult, I'm like, I'm willing to see your light. I'm willing
yeah.
to really see who you are.
Yeah.
Um,
And would you say that brings more humility just in doing that?
right.
Because when we're not right and they're wrong, right? It's we are together, right? Isn't
Mhm.
that a way to uplift our humanity? Is that what you think?
Yeah. And I think the moment that you start to um, make someone less holy than you is
Uh-huh.
the moment you lose your own holiness, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really, that can be challenging, you know, especially if there's a particular differ of opinion or approach to life or whatever. And I think the last few years has been um, a real opportunity to see the world differently and to see other people differently and to also get to the root of who people are.
Right.
I see a lot of people like the earth is punishing us, and I'm like, no,
No, the
we're
earth is not.
punishing
Yes, we're
we're
punishing
punishing
ourselves.
ourselves.
So if you were to look at 2022, because we have a brand new year here, we're into the new year already. What would be your most precious goal, if you would, for yourself and for your service?
This is a really great question, and I don't know. I'm not sure I know the answer. I'll say this. You know, 222 is an angel number. It's
Yeah,
in the year. I know it's a 6 overall in numerology, but the 222 is interesting because 222 is about the recognition of your influence.
right.
So one is about oneness. So you see 111 on the clock, or you know, as an angel number, it's about oneness and the unity. But two is about your influence, like me and them.
Yeah.
And it's about realizing that everyone else out there is also you. And how you're treating yourself is how you're treating your neighbor, and how you're treating your neighbor is how you're treating yourself. So I feel like that's a big opportunity on a spiritual level this year.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I also know a little bit of the astrology of the year, and I'm hoping the Jupiter energy is going to be
Is
more influential than the Saturn, but we'll see.
I love it. I love it. So,
um,
is there a gift or a skill that you want to hone in on more for yourself? I
uh,
know you're really focusing on helping people raise their vibration and really
yeah,
teaching that.
that's our goal this year, is to teach people about raising their vibration, and it's just about making that conscious choice to be the love in the room everywhere you go. And I'm really working on that too, you know. I think a lot of people have noticed that I'm less reactive than
Mhm.
I ever have been. I've like really honed in, and I think it's just because of personal circumstances and challenges and stress moments. I've really been able to like, okay, just hold
Yeah.
it. Um, it makes me, as you know, bad at texting back or being instantaneous. The way I used to be like super reactive, I'm not as much anymore. And I like that. And I want to show that to other people. I'm like, we don't have to always react in the moment,
Mhm.
just hold it
Take a
together.
take a breath. Okay, you have something fabulous. You have a special kit. Is that right?
Oh
That
yeah.
let's talk about that because we can
Yeah, I
go
made
to
a high vibe toolkit last year because I'm all about service, and that is something that I've always tried to do. Is I always try and create free things all year
yeah.
round, and I made this like toolkit that's available all year round, and it's got like 3 manuals, 3 meditations, 3 tutorial videos all inside. And then when you sign up for it, you get my angel message every Monday as well. So
I'm going to sign up for it too. So anybody want that, go to kylegray.co.uk. Anyway,
mm,
Kyle, thank you so much for this
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
fantastic conversation. I adore you and what a fascinating man you are. And you are bringing so much joy and light and wisdom to all of us. And wow, what a treat to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Mwah. Take care.